Now we're turning to what's called the modern period. That's roughly the period between World War I and World War II. A good place to start looking at the stuff that comes out of the time between World War I and World War II is if you go with me in your supplement to figure A1. Where's my cursor? There we go. Figure A1, Pablo Picasso, the artist here. Demoiselles d'Avignon, the painting here. It's a good place to start looking at the modern period, the time between World War I and World War II. There's three things going on in the painting, technically, I want to point out to you before we get to the painting itself. There's three things going on in the painting. First of all, one thing going on in the painting is what we call abstraction. That's abstract, A-B-S-T-R-A-C-T-I-O-N, abstraction. Abstraction means shapes and colors that don't seem to refer to a real object. Shapes and colors that don't seem to refer to a real object. For example, let's take a look at the brown patch over here in the painting. As we look at it, we definitely have shape. Okay, there's a straight line here and a curving line there. We have shape. We definitely have differences in color, the different tones of color back here. So we have shape and color, but I'm not sure those shapes and colors really refer to anything. I mean, if I... There we go. If I, point right there, and I ask what's that, I'm not sure there's a real good answer to the question. So we've got shapes and colors that don't seem to refer to a real object. The second thing going on in the painting is what we call cubism. That's C-U-B-I-S-M, cubism. Now this isn't the best place to start talking about cubism. We'll get to some clearer examples in just a minute. But cubism means presenting the same object at different angles. Presenting the same object at different angles. It might show up most clearly if we look at the faces in the middle of the painting. Let's take this face here. As we look at the face, we realize that it looks kind of strange to us. Although we recognize the human nature of the face, we recognize the female qualities of femininity in the face. We also notice there's something kind of strange about the face, and we don't have to look at it too hard to figure out what it is. What's strange is that the different pieces of the face have been rearranged, taken apart, and then rearranged in different angles. For example, the woman's nose here looks as if she's facing that direction, but you're looking at the woman's ear over here as if she were looking in that direction. The different parts of the face are taken apart and then reproduced and rearranged at different angles. Well, this is not the best place to start talking about cubism. We'll get to some clearer examples in a minute. The third thing going on in the painting is what we call primitivism. We talked about primitivism when we looked at Gauguin's Hail Mary, when we talked about post-impressionism. Primitivism, that idea that people's problems are caused by society, are caused by rules and expectations and manners and morals and all those kinds of things, expected behaviors. And that the answer to the problems of Western culture is to get back to a state of nature. Primitivism is exhibited in the three outside faces, this face here, and this face here, and this face here. Faces which are almost direct copies of West African ceremonial masks, masks which come from a part of the world where people live whom Picasso believes to be a primitive people. And again, once you understand primitivism, you understand that term primitive people, it was originally intended to be a compliment, people who live close to a state of nature. I have here one of the West African ceremonial masks which was displayed in Paris at the time that Picasso was in Paris painting this painting, and you're able to see the connection and the resemblance on the screen there. So we've got three things going on in the painting: abstraction, cubism, and primitivism. One way of reading the painting is to read the painting as Pablo Picasso teaching this course, HUM 1020, Introduction to the Humanities. Like a lot of Picasso paintings, if you take the time to do it, you can kind of read the painting from left to right. The story of Western culture starts off here with the nothingness, First there was nothing, and then there was something. That's the start of the story of the whole universe, isn't it? How did something get into nothing? How did nothing come out of something? Well, that's one of the big questions of the universe. Well, we start off with nothing, the nothingness of the abstraction over here. But then quickly we pick up something, and then we begin to see the development of human life, symbolized by the primitivism in the face here, of people living close to a state of nature. So here, see, we are in the Paleolithic, Neolithic periods, and then we start to see the development of Western culture, symbolized by the European faces in the center of the painting. Not, of course, that you have to be European to be a part of Western culture. That'd be a silly thing to say. But that's where it begins. That's where its roots lie. And so that's what's being symbolized here. Okay. So backing up again, here we have the Paleolithic, Neolithic periods. We see the development of civilization. We start to talk about Western culture. Here we're talking about Athens and Rome and the Hebrew legacy and the fall of Rome and the Middle Ages and the Renaissance and the Northern Renaissance and the Baroque period and the Enlightenment. And then we come to this jagged break, which we can take as Picasso's own time period. This time period that we're summarizing and calling World War I. The painting's painted about a decade before that war actually breaks out. But this whole group of crises that we call World War I. Picasso's own time. The rest of the painting is a hopeful painting. And what's the hope for? Well, the rest of the painting is the future. And what's the hope for the future but to get back to nature? To get rid of everything that's come before in the course, to crumple it up almost like crumpling up a piece of paper. Can you see almost like that crumpling paper here? To throw away, to wad up and throw away everything that's come before in the course. One response to this cultural crisis is to call into question everything we've talked about in the course so far. And here we see Picasso kind of crumpling up the past, throwing it away, and the hope is to get back to a state of nature. This cultural self-hatred, a despising of one's own culture and one's own cultural heritage, it's kind of an interesting psychological issue, I guess, and well, it's going to come up several times in the rest of our semester.